us to humble ourselves in order to get saved. But even then, there's a continual process of making much of Him and less of us. And I'm glad that the Lord is merciful. Some of us have a hard time even admitting to being proud. You know what keeps that from happening? Pride. A lot of times we go, I'm not proud. That's probably the most proud statement one could make. The reality of the situation is we all deal with it. Now, there are some people who are exponentially more haughty than others. Look at me, I'm the best thing that's ever been. You know, there are some that are that way, and we equate that, well, that's what pride is. That's a part of it. Haughtiness and pride go hand in hand. But do you understand, there is also those that would represent, or let me say it this way, they would mask their pride with a false sense of humility. And that looks like always talking down about yourself, thinking ill of yourself, and it's a very self-centered view of the world. Oh, I'm no good. Oh, I could never do that. Oh, Jesus could never use me. He couldn't love me. I. You know who's the center of that? It's selfish. It's pride. You say, no, I'm not thinking I'm great. No. Just because it's not haughtiness doesn't mean it isn't pride. And there's a balance to those. And thank God He's merciful and He deals with us, because God resisteth the proud. And He has a desire for you and I to draw closer to Him. You ever felt like you were worthless? Do you understand that's a unscriptural view of yourself? You were bought with a price. God deemed you worth the death of His only begotten Son. How dare you suggest that you are worthless when He paid for you? You say, well, what do we think? So here's the idea. We're unworthy, but not worthless. And maintaining that. And God deals with us, and He teaches us, and we learn, and we go through processes of this. And it's a learning curve that every believer has to go through. You say, well, I'm going to get saved and I'm going to be the most humble person that's ever been. It's a learning process that we all go through. And sometimes He humbles us and we don't like it, but it's for our benefit. And then we looked at last time we were together in this study, we looked at the idea of purity. In John 15, He said, every branch in me that beareth fruit, He purgeth it, that it might bring forth more fruit. And we looked at that and the idea that God deals with us all the same in these ways. He wants us in our separation. Come out from among them and be ye separate. He wants us to remove ourselves from certain situations, not because we're better than, but rather because we are wicked people. And our sanctification, getting cleaned up. And we looked at those things because God deals with us all the same way. And do you understand? He's going to ask you to choose Him over everything else. And a lot of times at the very beginning when we first get saved, or we first start living for God or getting right with God, some of those decisions can be very difficult. Do I love God more than my job? Do I love God more than my family who hate Him? We have to make those decisions, and He brings us through those things, and we all go through it. Some of the things He asks us to give up for Him. Let me remind you of this, that God never asks for something that He does not replace with something better. And so He never takes from you. God always adds. And when He asks, here, let me have it. So we think, well, if I give up my friends who are wicked and worldly and a bad influence on me, then I won't have any friends. That's how we think. That's our mindset. And in each one of these, every time we come to these points of, now what? They're an opportunity. Unfortunately, they are a decision that must be made. Am I going to continue on the path of walking with the Lord or not? A lot of times people grow in certain areas up to a point, and then they'll say, okay, no further. God, I've given you all this much, but that thing, you don't get that thing. And that's kind of how it goes. This morning, we're going to continue our study in a common salvation. It's some things that are common to man. We're all going to face these this morning. And I want you to look with me, 1 Peter chapter 4. We'll read verses 12 and 13 together. 1 Peter 4, verse 12. Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. But rejoice, inasmuch as ye are partakers of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also with exceeding joy. Let's pray. Father, we love you. We thank you for your word. God, we ask that you'd help us as we study a little bit this morning. Lord, may you give comfort. God, that we're not the only ones that are going through it. May you give us a resolution to continue walking with you in spite of difficult days. In Jesus' name, amen. We're dealing with now at this point the idea of problems. And can I tell you that problems are common to man? Job would say, man that's born of a woman is of few days and full of trouble. Here's what Peter said, beloved, think it not strange. Don't be surprised when it happens. Don't react to a fiery trial as though some strange thing happened unto you. That's what he's saying here. Beloved, verse 12, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial, which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you. Do you realize that fiery trials aren't odd for a Christian? If they're not strange, do you understand that means they're normal? I'm going through a fiery trial. The Lord's like, yep. That's normal. Now, how many of us enjoy a good fiery trial? No takers this morning? Of course not. Not at all. Do you understand when you go through a fiery trial that invariably some things that won't withstand the fire get burned off? Let me ask it to you this way, and this is context here. Would you rather those things burn up now or then? Notice what he said, verse 13. He said, but rejoice inasmuch as ye are partakers of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, that's when the rewards are coming. When his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also with exceeding joy. Boy, I sure am glad I went through that fiery trial that revealed I was building with wood, hay, and stubble. Why? Because now I've got gold, silver, and precious stone in its place because he taught me something through that I have learned. You say you get gold, silver, and precious stones from fiery trials? Well, let's see. Come back to chapter 1. 1 Peter 1. Verse 6, wherein ye greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, ye are in heaviness through manifold temptations, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. Can I submit to you that the purpose of the pain, the purpose here of the problems, those trials, those fiery trials, is to purify what you're doing? It's to take you from one thing and to give you something to be glad about later. The trying of your faith being much more precious than of gold that perisheth. But do you understand that that means that in this problem that we're facing, it is a situation like the Lord told Peter, Satan hath desired to have thee, to sift thee as wheat. Here's what he said, I've prayed for you that your faith fail not. Do you understand that means that the devil's goal in that trial was that Peter's faith would fail? That's his attempt. And Jesus' prayer was that your faith fail not. Do you realize that what that means is that when our faith is tried, it is put up in a position of either do we continue believing God and go from faith to faith and grow in our faith, or do we decide, I don't know that I can faith and believe you in this, and so as a result we withdraw. Those are the two options. And when our faith is being tested and is being grown, do you understand there's always a part that's a bit scary going, God, I hope they make it through this. That's what Jesus was telling Peter. I've prayed for you. Why? Because when thou art converted, hey, when you get to the other side of this thing, strengthen the brethren. There's more needed here. Don't give up now. Keep going. But to get where he wanted him to be, he had to put him through this problem. Because it revealed something in Peter that was wrong. Remember Peter's thought process? I'll never deny you. Never going to happen. Though all should forsake you. Not me. I'll die with you. Here's the problem. Peter was willing to die for Christ, but he wasn't willing for Christ to die. And Christ dying was the will of God. See, Peter was willing to do what Peter wanted. Boy, what a sacrificial statement, right? I'll die for you. I believe he meant that. Wholeheartedly, he meant it. The problem, Peter, is Jesus wasn't asking you to die for him. He was asking you to let him die and trust him. See, when God wants to do something different than we want him to do, doesn't that shake us up a bit? Wait a minute, God, that's not what I wanted you to do. I know, do you trust me? So he takes us through problems. And we all go through problems. Watch this now. Look around. How many of you have ever dealt with a problem in your life? Go ahead and raise your hand. Look around. Look, take some comfort this morning looking around. Look, raise them back up. Look at it. Look at every single hand in here. Now, watch this. How many of you are going through a problem right now? Isn't that a blessing? I mean, he said to rejoice, didn't he? Rejoicing in problems isn't easy, is it? It isn't easy if we don't recognize what he's doing. How many of you would rather give me, or would rather that I give you a stick or a bar of gold? Who wants the stick? Who wants the bar of gold? Okay, there's some smart folks in here. We want a bar of gold, don't we? Okay, so listen now. If you have a stick, and I say, why don't you let me burn that stick? I mean, it's a fiery trial. Don't sticks burn in fire? But wait, if I let you know that I'm only burning the stick so I can give you a bar of gold, aren't you okay with it? Right? Here's my stick. You can burn it, and I'll have a bar of gold on the other side. Yes. How many of us would sign up for that? Again, all of us are like, that's not a bad deal. Okay, that's literally what he just told us is taking place. There's a fiery trial that you might come forth as gold. Isn't that what Job said? He said, I shall come forth as gold. What is the purpose? To go from wood, hay, stubble, gold, silver, precious stones. The purpose is that when he comes at his appearing, we will have rejoicing and there will be glory. Why? Because what was something that was off is now right. So we go through trouble so we can learn those things. And let me tell you, he which hath begun a good work in you will perform it to the day. You say, I don't want God to keep working on me. Too bad. He's told you, he's promised you he would continue working on you. How many of us have failed him so many times that we've asked him, why aren't you just done with me? You ever felt that way? Hey, aren't you glad that even though we're not faithful, hey, he can't deny himself, yet he abideth faithful. He is too faithful to give up on you. He's promised you that he wouldn't. Sometimes that means he lets you go through problems. Why am I dealing with this? We all deal with it. Think it not strange. Why am I going through this? This is strange. This is anomalous behavior, God. God's like, no, it's not. There's purpose to this. It's intentional. Nobody likes to go through intentional problems. If we woke up every morning and were given a choice, you want the problem-free day or the Monday? Which one are you choosing? Right? I mean, problem-free or problem-filled. How many of us are unspiritual enough, just so you know, to pick the problem-free day? I'm like, Lord, I'll take the problem-free, please. He's like, problem-free? No, that's not what I said. Problemless. You realize how bad that'd be for us? That wouldn't be a good thing. Do you understand how much we've learned about God and our problems? Because here's what he's doing. He wants us to go through problems, not because he is a mean person, but there's some things in our problems that we need to learn. Come back to James chapter 1. Look what this says. James 1, just back to your left a couple pages. James 1. I was going to give you two of these this morning. I'll finish this probably tonight then. I'm going to give you just a couple thoughts here in our problems, and we'll finish up this common salvation tonight because we've got baptisms in a bit. We're excited about that. James chapter 1, look at verse 6, please. That's the wrong passage. I meant verse 2. Go back to verse 2. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. Give it to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Let me ask you, how many of you have believed God on something but wavered? I pray this prayer regularly out of Mark 9, there with the man whose son was a lunatic, and he comes to him and he asks the Lord, why couldn't your disciples cast out the devil? Here's what he says, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. I pray that to the Lord all the time. I believe you, but I need some help. Help thou mine unbelief. Do you understand? Now watch. We're to go through trials, problems that increase our faith. Because there's something, verse 5, we need to ask for, wisdom, that we can't ask wavering. So we need the confidence of a perfect faith to be able to ask for that which we need. And without perfect faith, he doesn't give it. That's what he said. So how do we get what we need? We go through the trials to let patience have her perfect work. Because the trying of your faith worketh patience. So we learn some things, don't we? Each trial we go through, each situation we face, we learn more. And it's to grow us that our faith would increase, because listen, we need stronger faith. How many of you this morning would say, I need my faith to be increased? There is an entire generation of Christianity that has told you, and I mean you've heard it, don't pray for patience. How many of you have heard that preached before? Please listen, that's unbiblical preaching. Now, I understand what they're saying. You pray for patience, the trying of your faith worketh patience. Guess what you're going to get? So don't pray for patience. No. That's the wrong approach to the problem. Because we need patience. Here it said, let patience have her perfect work. So, okay, we need this in our life. I don't like how we get it, but we need it. So I'm going to submit to the process because I recognize my need. You ever submitted to the process because you recognize your need? Oh, God, I don't like this, but I need it. And you're a whole lot better at this thing than I am, so I'm going to trust you. We'll give you two areas here in problems that our faith is increased. And again, remember, God is long-suffering and He's merciful, so He doesn't expect us, all right, you just got saved 27 seconds ago. You better have all the faith you need in your whole life right now. Go. Aren't you glad that's not the case? He grows us and He teaches us and He leads us along that we might strengthen. And listen, faith is an exercisable thing, which means it can increase with use. It can grow. So in this area, we're dealing with the area of solutions. We go through problems. And God has to teach us all this. Listen, you know the verses, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. How does it start? Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths. We're supposed to trust in the Lord, right? That's faith. But then He says, lean not unto thine own understandings. You know why God told us that? Because we have a tendency to lean on, to rely on what we know. Can you see that to be true in your life? How many of you don't like change? You know why that is? Because we have a tendency to rely on what we know. I'd rather the problem I know than the problem I don't. Which is why a lot of women stay married. I mean, do you understand that we are supposed to trust in the Lord and not lean on our own understanding? All right? Now let me ask you, how many of you faced a problem and your immediate thought is, what's the solution? Isn't that, guys, isn't that how we operate? You've been presented with a problem. How do I fix it? We're geared that way. Fix it. Fix it. Fix it. How do I fix this? What's the solution? How do I get out of this? How many of you have ever had a bill come in and it catch you off guard? Whether it should have or shouldn't have is irrelevant. It caught you off guard. I mean, you weren't expecting this. And our immediate thought goes to, well, how am I going to pay this? Where's this coming from? How can I pay this? We start going through bank accounts. Okay, nothing in that one, nothing in that one, nothing in that one. Oh boy, we start going through, then we start going, well, what do? I would advise against it, but then we start going to credit cards. But watch, here's the problem. If that's how we think, the more than likely, this one's maxed out, and that one's maxed out, and this one's maxed out. Why? Because those aren't the answer. And you had to get all of those maxed out for you to come to the conclusion that you don't know what you're doing. If you knew what you were doing, those wouldn't all be maxed out. Come on, how many else of us have been there? So we might do something drastic. Remortgage. Second mortgage. Boy, we're really doing good, aren't we? How many solutions that don't fix it are you going to need before you come to the realization that the answer is not found in you? We find ourselves in a world of hurt before we ever ask the Lord and trust Him, don't we? Here's our thought process. Man, I tried everything I could even think of. I guess we might as well pray. I've done everything I know to do. Guess we might as well pray. You understand how much hurt we could avoid if we put prayer at the front end instead of the back end? You'll ask God to fix the big problem we produced by trying our own solution instead of the little problem that He had the solution to. If you can trust Him when your solution doesn't work, why not trust Him with the solution in the first place? But here's what happens. We all deal with this. We face a problem. And it's a big problem to us, but it's not the biggest problem we'll face. And we learn that He is willing and able to answer that need. So we learn that God can provide a solution to our problems. Do you understand the Bible says that the eyes of the Lord run to and fro to show Himself mighty on the behalf of them whose heart is right with Him and who fear the Lord? He wants to show Himself in your life. He wants to. A lot of times we don't even let Him. But we learn, God, there's nothing I can do about this. You put us in a situation that's beyond our capability. Can you fix it? And how many of you had God fix that problem before? You ought to just take the time to rejoice in that alone, right? But watch. So that we deal with this. Impossible for us to fix. God, we need you. And He comes through. Because that's just who He is. And then we go a ways, we face something else that's impossible to fix. Now, I hope that this time we didn't spend so long before we learned to seek Him. But if you're like me, maybe this time you spent just as long, because we're a little slow, thick-headed. Well, God got me out of that one. Don't worry, God. I won't make you get me out of another. Yeah, right. Boy, we fumbled the ball, didn't we? Oh, man, we made a bigger mess this time than we did last time, God. We don't know what we're doing in any way, shape, or form. Help us. You ever took this and said, God, I know, watch now, I know you met that need, but I'm wavering on your ability to meet this need? You ever been there? God, I trust you because look what you've done for me. But I know you can. How many of you said this to God? I know you can. I just don't know if you will. You understand that's spiritualese for I don't trust you? It sounds good. But Hebrews says without faith it's impossible to please him. He must believe that he is and that he's a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. See, there's two parts of that that require faith. When it comes to our solutions, God, I don't know what to do here. What are you going to do? And he grows those things. And watch, so we've said it this way in the past, and you've probably heard it before, but our problems grow us. But then our problems grow so that our problems can grow us. But then our problems grow. How many of you are still all kinds of tore up when you scrape your knee? You did when you were 5. That was the biggest problem you faced. The end of the world. I scraped my knees. How many of us have had the Lord move us a little past that problem? But watch, we will still face problems, even in our physical bodies, that produce end of the world for us. Sometimes it's a broken limb. I broke my arm. How am I going to work now? I can't do X, Y, and Z. What is going to happen now? Sometimes it's something that requires a surgery. Now I'm laid up for months. Or, good night, you need your whole limb or part replaced. What are we going to do? Sometimes it's cancer. It's terminal. Sometimes it's a grave thing. And we've come a long way from a scraped knee. But listen, what those things along the way are supposed to teach us is that God is able and willing to show himself mighty in these ways. So a woman had an issue of blood for 12 years. 12 years. That's a long time to deal with a physical issue. But just touching the hem of his garment took care of it. You know what he said? Thy faith hath made thee whole. Some of us don't have some solutions because we don't have faith. You ought, I'd encourage everybody here, I'd encourage you to. He might not like that I'm going to say this, but I'd encourage you to get around Brother Paul and let him talk for a while. Here's what you're going to find. You're going to find that he will tell you of how God has done some things in his life that he couldn't do on his own. He'll tell you stories of what God's done in his life. I mean, miraculous things. He likes telling it. And that's a blessing. There are times I'm around him and he's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, tell me more. Why? Because I want to hear. Because here's the deal. You ought to have your stories of what God's done for you that's impossible. You ought to have your stories. Because he doesn't have any right or access more to God than anybody else in this room. I like it. When was the last time you faced something and went, okay, God, we're trusting you with the answer? Well, how are we going to do it? I don't even know. I'm not even going to try to figure it out. Because that's our go-to. We want to figure it out. How are you going to pay for this? Don't know. I just believe it's what God has for us to do. So we're going to keep moving forward. And now not only the solution, but this is the other part of this, and it'll be a little quicker because it's harder to do. And that is, he doesn't just teach us that he has the answers, the solutions, and not to trust our own, but he also, and this goes hand in hand with that, is he deals with us in this area of stillness. Because here's the truth. Here's how this works. We face a problem, and it works us up. Right? You're facing something that's overwhelming, something that's big, something that you can't handle, and I got to get this done. I got to figure out how to do this. I don't know how to get all this done. And when you're in that state, do you understand you can have a tendency to make poor decisions? So what are we supposed to do? Wait. Go to Exodus, if you would, please. Exodus 14. You know the verse, but just look at it with me. Exodus 14. Run a couple scriptures and be done. Exodus 14. Is this making sense to you this morning? You understand that God deals with us in this way? He deals with all of us in this way because he wants us to learn that we can trust him. A lot of times we'll trust God with our soul, but not with our problems. We trust him that he promised us that if we believe on him, he'd take us to heaven. But I'm not sure he can help with this. Be it financial, be it a family thing, be it a physical issue. You ever have a relationship that you couldn't mend? Let me ask you a question. Doesn't that hurt us, our flesh? Doesn't that hurt? Have you considered that he's the one who can turn the heart? Why are you so defeated about that relationship when you're talking to the only one who can fix it? We live in defeat because we don't trust him to fix it. Look at Exodus 14, look at verse 13. Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show you today. Stand still. Fear has a tendency to cause us to exhibit nervous energy. We may not know the solution, but we got to try something. Otherwise, people will think we're lazy. God's like, if you want to keep trying, I'll wait till you're done. And it would do us good to learn to wait on him. Here's the problem. These things grow. And it's not that hard to wait on God for 5 minutes. But what happens when it's 5 days or 5 months or 5 years? That's harder, isn't it? Lord willing, Brother Freddie will be out here in a week and a half. You understand? He prayed for his dad for like 27 years to get saved. That's a long time to pray for somebody, isn't it? 20-something years. Come with me to the book of Psalms, Psalm 46. Look at verse 10. Psalm 46, verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. Now, in the passage, the earth is being removed. The mountains are trembling. There's chaos all around. And what God is telling his people is, don't get afraid of the situation and run away. Because he has them right where he wants them, though it seems like that's where they're going to die. And God said, be still. Don't run away. And know that I'm God. So, Elijah, Mount Carmel happens, Jezebel happens. There you are in the cave. Walk to the edge of the cave and there's a whirlwind and there's a fire and there's the earthquake and all that's going on. Do you understand? That would be, let's call it commotion and loud and noise. But even though God caused all of it, he's showing him something. Lord wasn't in the fire. He wasn't in the earthquake. He wasn't in the wind. But then Elijah hears, what is it called? A still, small voice. Elijah wraps his face in a mantle and goes out to speak to the Lord. A still, small voice. You say, why? Because we get the idea that God is in these big, grandiose movements. But the reality of the situation is that most of the time, he doesn't need all the fanfare. It's learning to be still that people have a hard time with. You see, big, grandiose, boisterous, right? Charismatic people draw a crowd. Do you understand that? Hitler got a pretty big crowd, didn't he? Not exactly the most loving person in the world, but charismatic personality. If we're not careful, we get caught up in all these other things. But what we're supposed to be learning is the patience, the stillness, that it doesn't rile us up when we're facing the problem. And as we've been talking about on Thursday night, affect our spirit. Because the effect of righteousness is quietness and assurance forever. It's the stillness. So there's times we handle it better than others. I'm talking about me personally. There's times we've handled it better than others. You get a bill in the mail, and you're like, where'd that even come from? I know I can't do this. So what are you going to do? I don't know. I'm not even going to worry about how we're going to do it. God will have to take care of it. Then there's other times when a bill comes in the mail, even for less than that one, and we're like, oh man, how are we going to fix this? What are we going to do? Maybe I can do this. And it's like, oh, we need to learn the lesson again, don't we? Let patience have her perfect work. Okay, God, I need another one. I need to be reminded that you've got this. And when I still think I have it, he seldom gets the credit. So he puts it out there beyond our reach so we'll take our hands off and go, I'm just going to wait for you. But we have to grow into these things. And your faith is going to be rewarded. Do you understand that? And so there's great value in growing. But along the way, you're going to have nights where you're crying out to God going, do you even hear? Do you know? Do you see? And I'm telling you, he knows and he sees and he cares. And he's able and he wants to help you with your problems. That's why he brought you into them, to show you that you can't, but he can. He is the answer. Quit looking this way and look that way. Trust Him. And wait on Him. Look at Psalms 37 and we're done, because it's only a page or two back. Oh, that's the wrong one. It was chapter 27. I don't even want you to see 37, 34. You can look that one up on your own time. Psalm 27, it's verse 14. Verse 13 said, I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage. He shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. He sends us through fiery trials. Beloved, think it not strange. You're going through it. We have to, because He wants to teach you something about His ability to answer and give you the solution, but He also wants to teach you about stillness. Do you understand that stillness doesn't come from an absence of trouble? It comes from faith in the trouble, during the trouble. It's relying on Him that gives us our stability. Stand to our feet this morning.